thank you. Let's move to fuel security. We covered the minimum stockholding obligation for petrol, diesel and jet fuel at some length last Senate estimates. You gave to me on notice in SQ 24-000046 that the refineries may also report crude oil and unfinished stock as liquid fuel. Do you have a breakdown of how much of the reported stockholding is actually finished liquid fuel versus crude oil, not projected conversion of existing crude into future petrol, diesel or jet fuel, but the actual quantities of the four measures as it exists now?
So just so Paula Svarcas, Division Head, Gas and Liquid Fuels, Senator. So just so I'm really clear, so what you're asking for the MSO obligation, how much of the crude oil do we count as petrol, jet fuel and diesel? Yes,
and can you provide to me, yes, but can you also provide to me the actual amounts right now of crude oil as it is, jet fuel as it is, petrol as it is and diesel as it is, not projected conversions of crude oil into those things?
I will have to take on notice the projected for crude oil into those things because the MSO does allow for the reporting obligations to effectively say I've got a bucket of crude oil and I will be converting X amount of it into through their normal operations. How much of that is going to be diesel? How much of that is going to be jet fuel, etc. So I would have to take on notice how much of the crude is crude, if you will, and how much is fuel.
That'd be good. You've explained previously how there's the domestic minimum stockholding obligation for petrol, diesel, jet fuel put in place by the government. Then there's the International Energy Agency agreement for 90 days of crude oil. Last estimates, you told me we were at 55 days for International Energy Agency days for crude oil. What's the latest figure for that? And is all of that stock in Australia's exclusive economic zone here?
So the actual figure of that today, which is the last report of March 2024, is 53 days, Senator. And that figure it captures all of the things. So just let me describe, might be helpful if I describe what's captured in that. So it's crude oil as crude oil. It's diesel, petrol and jet fuel. It also includes other refined products. So, for example, it would include the oil that you would put into your car is included under the definition provided to us by the IEA. It's the fuel. It's those stocks that are on land in Australia and in our domestic waters. But importantly, that's the difference between the IEA days and the MSO calculation. Is it does not include the product that's in our EEZ, just the product that's in Australian waters or physically in Australia.
So, is there any double counting then?
No, Senator, there's no double counting because there's a difference between a vessel that is in Australian waters, how it's included in the IEA days, and how and stock that is in the EEZ that is counted in the MSO days. It might be also useful, Senator, if you indulge me, to explain the difference of the measures that we have in place, just so that you can get an idea of what we use it for. So, as I described, the IEA days are one single calculation of all of the fuel and fuel products as defined by the IEA. We also have our consumption cover days, and they're the days that we report every month publicly, and you'll find those on our website. And that is a measure of how long the stock will last. So that gives us a really good indication of what we've got every month and how long, based on average consumption, that will last, and that's all publicly available. And then we also have the MSO, which is slightly different because what that tells us is, or the purpose of that measure is to set that minimum stockholding obligation to give us the insurance policy of making sure, from our perspective, how much fuel, liquid fuels and things we should have in Australia should there be a market disruption. So the purpose of each of those reportings is slightly different, which is why what goes into them is, what we count and how we count them is also slightly different because they have different purposes.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to the numbers that you're going to give me. Our strategic reserve...
Senator Roberts, if you finish that line of questioning, we will need to rotate.
Okay, just one more question on strategic reserve. You told me at last Senate estimates that Australia has sold all of the oil reserves in the United States Strategic Reserve.
Correct.
That was 1.7 million barrels nearly 2 years ago in June 2022. That hasn't been reported anywhere, as I understand it.
No, Senator, I believe it was publicly reported. I'd be happy to table that report.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone at the department announce that 1.7 million barrels had been sold?
Like I said, I believe it was. I'm happy to correct if my evidence is wrong, but I do believe it was made public at the time.
Thank you, Chair.